So from the last time you guys saw this drawing, I have made a few additions. I have continued working on this horse here in the front. I have started in on the horse here, the second row, or second back. And of course I still have more to do. I have another horse that I need to create the contour lines of. But what I'd like to do today is help you, give you some ideas for how to get into some of the more challenging parts of this drawing. So far I've encouraged you to stick to the easy stuff, the areas where you can really easily tell where one edge of an object ends and another one begins. But as we get further into this process, we want to get more detailed. And so we're going to begin looking for places not where just the edge of an object occurs, but the edge of a color, or a change in texture, or a change in value. So light and shadow. Because the more detailed we create this drawing, the more realistic it's going to turn out, and believe it or not, the easier it's going to be for you when we start to put in some color to this picture. So this is kind of the legwork we do up front that's going to really have a big impact down the line. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to look at the photograph with you and show you some of those areas I'm talking about, what you should be looking for in your own photographs. Okay, so I'm going to set the drawing aside for just a minute. Now what I sometimes like to do is actually grab a marker, the same one we used to create our grid, and make some marks on the photograph. Now this isn't necessary, you don't have to do this, but I find it to be a pretty valuable process in helping me determine where these changes occur, and then how do I actually transfer those over to my drawing. So let me show you what I mean. Let's look at this middle horse for a second, because we have a pretty clear place where the light stops hitting the back of the neck and the shoulders and falls into shadow. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? So what I want to do is I want to actually define that edge, where that shift occurs. So I'm taking my marker and I'm going to actually draw right on the photograph. And sometimes we have to make kind of a judgment call as to where we think that edge occurs. But I'm saying right there, if you guys can see that. And I can actually zoom in just a little bit for you. And what that does, by drawing that line, I'm able to then take that over to my drawing using that grid technique and figure out exactly where that shadow occurs. And the more I do this, the better I'm going to get at it. Like for instance, if we look at this further away horse, it's maybe not quite as clear where that shadow occurs because the skin or the fur is a little darker to begin with. Hair, I don't know, horse hair, right? So I have to look a little bit closer, and I have to maybe make a little bit more of a judgment call as to where I think that line should be. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I come in here, there's kind of this little light pocket, and then I just kind of pick a spot. I sort of just decide where a good place for that line to be, right? Sometimes it's a gradual shift from a dark to a light, but I'm going to sort of pick the place I think I see the most change from one value to the next. All right, and then I also want to think about doing this in the way that creates closed spaces. What do I mean by that? Well, I need to know where this value begins and where it ends, right? So for instance, this is going to take us all the way up the animal underside here, and then so later on when I'm deciding how to color this thing, I now have a closed space. So I don't want to just draw random lines. I actually want to create kind of pockets. I like to think of them as pockets. So the same thing's happening on this guy. I create a pocket of this darker value that actually wraps all the way down, right, and then back up here. And actually kind of notice how this dark pocket actually envelops some of this closer horse here. Do you guys see that? We actually can't see because of shadow where this horse ends and where this one begins, and that's okay because we're not drawing what we think is there, we're drawing what we can actually see or what we can't see. okay? So there I've created a closed pocket there. Now you can go even further and look for medium-sized pocket or medium value pockets. Notice here, there's kind of a little dark patch that's sort of in the shadow of the mane, right? You guys see that? So these are some places that we can pick out that are going to help define the form of this animal. We can also see light pockets. Look at this guy. He's got this light skin tone popping through right here. We see it again down here. Now, do you have to actually mark up your photograph? You don't have to. You can make judgments about